A 10 hut and a good Saturday to you all. Nick Hines, along with Joe Moran. Pleasure to be back on a live show for the weekend outlook and a little bit of rain here in Southern California, Joe. They say it never rains in Southern California, but it's coming down pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a wet winter. We had some rain before the holidays and before the New Year's. It was raining pretty good about an hour ago. Out my window right now, it's stopped. I'm about 8 miles from Santa Anita, so hopefully it's stopping there. But I have to imagine there's going to be changes of some sort today just based off how much rain we got earlier this morning.
No, absolutely. And they've obviously kind of sent out a warning shot last night. I mean, obviously the environment, the whole situation has changed since dating back to 2019. We had 12 inches of rain in January of that year, and it kind of created sort of a domino effect in regards to the track and track safety and whatnot. Just a reminder, this is a live show. So we want to thank Hannah behind the scenes for coordinating and, kind of putting the questions together. We already have questions that have been preloaded. The discussion today will involve, of course, Forbidden Kingdom and his return. It's great to have the King back, looking so fabulous in the mornings. Joe, you've had an insider's perspective. Of course, Richard Mandela and his entire crew doing a wonderful job with him. Also want to touch on Gulfstream action with the horse that you all can indicate interest in the Grade 2 Harlan's Holiday with Blue Devil. And certainly looks like a live opportunity for him. But that will take place later on today, of course, in race 10. Down at the Gulfstream, the weather, no rain, off turf, but really doesn't matter much because the Harlan Holiday is on the main track, and Blue Devil is drawn in post position number 4. It's a field of 11 with one scratch of the 5, Signator. All right, Joe, let's kind of lead in here and touch on Forbidden Kingdom. You mentioned with the probability of races being taken off the turf, I would have to imagine with that, what went into the idea of entering on turf today down the hill?
Yeah, it was actually a major part of it was this time of year and the weather with the possibility of it coming off the turf. But saying that, we would have pursued running if it was on the turf. This is something that the one time he did run on the turf, it was going 5/8 around the tight turns. And I don't think he really took that turn well, that final turn as a young horse. He's matured a lot, obviously, since then. But his speed down the hill, I think, would be a pretty big weapon. I mean, a horse that you can kind of compare him to, not compare him to talent-wise, but tactics-wise, like Brickyard Ride. Very fast, where if he could get down the hill, that horse showed that he was able to do it and could just draw away doing so. So it was kind of a race when we looked at the racing schedule for a comeback race. The dirt sprint stakes schedule doesn't start till the latter half of February. So timing-wise, he was really ready to run. We weren't sure if an allowance race was going to be written. It was written on January 12th. It's still one of those races that you would think would go now since it's a prep race for that dirt stakes series. At the same time, it's never a guarantee. So this was a guarantee spot. I think his last work was really the icing on the cake of saying he's ready to run. And looking at that weather forecast at that time, it was about 10, 12 days out. It looked like there was even going to be more rain at the time. And that kind of gave us the push to have him nominated and then further enter into this spot.
Well, a big thank you to Sean Hamilton asking that particular question. I know that, for the viewers, for the partners, there was obviously some concern knowing that early on in his career that he did compete over the turf, which didn't really pan out in the grand scheme of things. But the truth be told, clearly he's a better horse now, and he really didn't run all that bad when you consider in looking at the competition. And he's clearly a horse that got better with age. So I think that I have to applaud. Yeah, I have to applaud Richard Mandela, because he foreshadowed, Joe. This is something that, came out in an article early in the month and, seemingly kind of surprised all of us based on the fact that, thinking, why would we enter on the turf knowing that he had that one poor turf race? But as good as he's been training, as great as he looks in the flesh, the fact that Flavien Prat has gotten aboard, it'd be nice if we have the opportunity to go out and perform. We're still waiting at 8:05 effective here on the left coast. We do not know if they are going to, take races off the turf. We also have a graded stake carded as the third in the Robert J. Frankel, which, I'm sure trainers in that particular race, if they were to take the turf races off, and I think there are a total of 3 races designated for grass today, there's a pretty good chance that they're just going to call the whole day off and then kind of come back and try and recoup and maybe race next weekend with these turf races. So with that in mind, we're going to go forward as if we are going to run. So the question I asked you is, it comes off the turf, card goes forward, do we race?
Absolutely. I think it would be, given the rain here, I think the track conditions are still going to be good enough where the one note I would say is if it came to a point where the track was really sloppy, where we've seen California not race when it gets sloppy over the last couple of years. But pending the track conditions, at least if we had good track conditions, we wouldn't want to put him in a situation where he had to overexert himself over a bad track or anything like that in his comeback race. But I think it will be a benefit. I think if you saw this race come off the turf and move to the dirt, you're going to see a lot of scratches. There's a few horses with the same idea as us right outside of us, Peaceful Waters, never ran on the turf in his career. So he was clearly entered, in my opinion, in this race, hoping that the race would come off the turf. And then same with Tahoe Sunrise of Bob Baffert, looking for a spot, knowing the schedule and the series of races ahead of what's available, that this was a spot that could come off the turf and turn into a dirt stake race.
Yeah, interesting to note, Tahoe Sunrise also by the great American Pharaoh. Well, again, in speaking with regard to Forbidden Kingdom, as far as how a horse trains, you couldn't have a horse training any better. Not just an opinion of yours, mine, the Clockers, Andy Harrington, who sends out his daily workout reports, in addition to the Toby Terrell in DRF, and obviously reporting there. They've given him high grades based on their thoughts and how he is moving forward. When you look at Forbidden Kingdom, knowing that we've seen this horse develop since him being a yearling, how do you see him now versus before? Let's take it back to the spring and even prior to. How much has he really improved in your book, or has he improved? And what have you seen both mentally and physically? Any attributes there that have changed?
Yeah, I think mentally he's grown up a ton in his work. So, when you see him, he was always a horse that showed speed, and we always were trying to get him to rate. I think that almost kind of worked against him. Mandel was really just trying to develop him into that horse that could do anything. And I think that just speaks volumes of what Richard Mandel thought of the horse. In the end, I think it kind of worked against us at that time. Since he's come back, we've really tried to stay out of his way. Even in this work, he was working in company. Once he separated from Sumter, who is a good workhorse and a talented racehorse, he just let him go, stay out of his way. In this work, Jose Contreras, his normal exercise rider, was aboard. 2 works prior, Flavian Pratt was aboard. And I think the one thing, Juan Hernandez really didn't do anything wrong to him, but getting Pratt into town, Pratt worked him. He really got him to relax. And that was something that's been hard to do for this horse in the early part of his career, even in the springtime of last year, was going down the backstretch of getting him to settle into the bit. And I think that's something that we've seen. His works have been nothing but spectacular, and especially his last 2 from a fitness standpoint. When we were first thinking about this race, he really hasn't had an extensive work tab. He does have 2 3/4 works under him, but it's not like he had a big series of works leading up to that. The one thing that we've always said about this horse is he's sporty. He doesn't carry a ton of flesh, so we knew it wasn't going to take him long to get fit. But I think this last work that you're seeing on the screen was kind of that exclamation mark to say he's ready.
All right. Touching wood, Joe. Here's a horse that, in truth, he never really had a quote unquote soundness issue. It was more predicated on the ulceration of the soft palate, and obviously this last turnout was a result of, just letting this horse decompress and essentially come back. Because let's face it, he's only raced twice in 2023. And this is a horse who finished second to Taiba, who was a multiple grade 1 winner in the Malibu. And the anticipation was ultra high. We were thinking Forbidden Kingdom was a Breeders' Cup sprint bound, Breeders' Cup dirt mile type individual. So needless to say, it's been a little disappointing because we know the talent ratio of this horse and what he's capable of. And I think ultimately, would you have to agree that, getting that grade 1 victory to stamp him as a stallion, wouldn't you say that's the goal for 2024?
Absolutely. And I think it's something that we're going to maybe have to take some chances on this year. And while he's doing good, as you said, we've never really had any physical issues. He's battled some feet issues over the years, but nothing significant by any means, but just something that we've had to been cautious of. And then, as you mentioned, that ulceration under the palate. So, I really think we got high hopes this year. We're just going to have our fingers crossed that everything continues as it is right now. And I think we'll have a lot to look forward to in 2024.
All right. Big shout out to those who've tuned in, and we appreciate you joining the live show here on the final Saturday of 2023. So much to reflect upon as my racehorse continues to build, not only here domestically, but on an international global scale. And a big thank you to our partners down under in Australia, absolutely blowing it up down there. And of course, in Europe. Did get a message back just a moment ago from the race secretary at Santa Anita. Highly unlikely for these races to remain on turf, and they're not going to make a decision based on whether or not they're even going to race today for another hour. So stay tuned on that. We'll keep you apprised on that, Joe, and of course the entire team will keep you informed as to what the decision will be. Because as you know, being that the Joe Hernandez is the first race on the card, of course, deserving for the king himself, Forbidden Kingdom, first post 12 p.m. Pacific. So they're going to have to make a decision likely within the hour as, horses, not for the first race, but in race 2, they're getting LASIK. So generally, they like to make a decision at that 4-hour point prior to. So I'd have to imagine somewhere within the next 45 minutes, we should know. But great to see Forbidden Kingdom back, in the entry box, and he was dispatched at 3-1 on the morning line. So let's hope that he can bring many wins into the new year, and of course with a target for the Breeders' Cup Championships in the fall. All right, well, let's take a step back a little bit toward a horse that makes her debut, and this is a daughter of Candy Ride, and she will go postward on Monday. No issues there with weather. It's going to be, I think, a nice day, New Year's Day. No better way to start the new year off. It'll go as race number 1, Sweet Voyage, drawn post position number 6 of 8 for trainer Dan Blacker. This is in a partnership with Alcatraz Racing. She was a 2-year-old in training purchase earlier this year. Candy Ride, a daughter of, out of the city sitting there, Alfred Bay. Joe, how's she doing? And what's the anticipation for this?
Yeah, she's doing great physically. I think this is going to come down to something that we've messaged in our updates, that she's probably going to benefit from this race. The biggest question mark and thing that I don't want to say can shock us, but something that she can exceed our expectations on debut is the turf. When we purchased this filly at OBS in April, she worked phenomenal over the synthetic. That all-weather surface is going to translate a lot more to the turf rather than the main track at Santa Anita. Mm-hmm. The one thing I'll touch back on a few months ago, back in October and even September, was she started breezing on the training track. She started on the main track. We moved her to the training track, which is now currently shut down as they're implementing that Tapeta surface on the training track. So her works have had to move back to the main track. Her works on the training track, I think she took a major step forward. When she went back to the main track, she worked actually a half in company 3 works back with Arrow the Great, who's a pretty solid allowance horse. And then she had to work 5/8 after that. And you could see that main surface that she struggled a little bit as the work got further. So I don't think it's something as much as fitness, but I just think it's a surface that she wasn't really handling as much. So we were kind of in a predicament where she had a nice little foundation under her. At the end of November, she had to take a little bit of a break, just came out of work. Not 100%, ended up being nothing major. We did all of our due diligence there. She was able to come back, work 4 times. So we're in a predicament with this race in front of us here, going 3/4 on the turf to give her a race or continue to work her on the main track. Ultimately, we made the decision saying that continuing to work her over the main track, she wasn't going to get a ton out of at that point. She's going to get more out of this race, in our opinion. And I think it's the right decision here. I think we have to go into it with realistic expectations that she may not be 100% ready. And in the end, I think she's going to be much better when she gets around 2 turns. I think we've seen it in her works. Even once she crosses the wire in the gallop out, that's when the best part of her works have really been. So I'm optimistic. I'm also going into it with realistic expectations. At the same time, when you look at the race, It's not the saltiest main special weight. It ended up being oversubscribed, so it's split into two divisions, bring it into a 7-8 horse field in both divisions.
All right. So you see the question on the screen there from Mick D, and he mentions, is it unusual to be entered in a race to improve fitness? It seems to be part of the motivation behind Sweet Voyage's upcoming race. And I'm going to touch on this. And what's interesting about her is that when she did breeze back in April and went in the coastal equine contingent, she did work and breeze 10 flat. What's also interesting is that when you look at her pedigree, this is the second foal out of the mare, Aliford Bay. She went on to become quite a moneymaker. And I think that when you consider what Aliford Bay did, she won it from the ages of 3 to 4 and earned in excess of 227,000. So I think that's a positive. Knowing that the Dan Blacker horses generally improve with a race in tow, as a handicapper, let's face it, I'm not going out there looking for a Dan Blacker first-time starter, and that's by no disrespect. But when you look back at a trainer, for example, he had a very good year. He was 20% in a quiet sort of way. But dating back to 2014, Joe, Dan Blacker is 5% with a first-time starter. So let's be realistic. Let's know the fact that this filly appears to be ready to run, yet she needs that experience and race experience to kind of move herself forward. So essentially, would you say running in a race like this would be good as how many workouts and experience? Can you give me kind of an estimate on that?
Yeah, generally I will say 3 to 4, and I think the turf will play a little bit of a factor into that, but I'll say this will make up for about 3 to 4 works for her. And here on the screen, you're seeing her out of the gate most recently. Her original company had to cancel, so she jumped in with a John Sadler out of the gate, a first-time starter by Golden Sense, or unraced runner by Golden Sense, Calbred. So it'll be interesting to watch this one. This one worked quite well as well. She's not quick out of the gate, not super fast out of the gate as well, but I think it's something that she'll be able to keep involved going 3/4 on the turf. But in the end, I think this race will cover a good amount of works for her versus continuing to work over that main track, as I mentioned earlier, where you just never know. As you see, if we looked at the work 2 back, she just really had to try hard going 5/8 over that main track. So it just comes to a judgment call of saying, is there really benefit of doing that at this stage of her work career? Or should we get her into the races and get that racing experience, which is going to go a long way as well, just as much as fitness?
Well, I think I'm going to add to that. Sometimes you're kind of at the mercy of the condition book, in a sense that you think to yourself, well, we could put 2 more works in and hopefully a race is going to come up on this particular date, or there's a race here and this is as good as X number of works. Yeah. But looking at this workout, and if we could have freeze the frame there, Hannah, note that the workmate went out 5 furlongs. So if you're looking at the workout and you're like, where does she go? She was essentially just meant to go a half mile and that was it. So the workmate, Sweet Voyage, went out 5 furlongs. So don't worry. Everything is just fine. Unfortunately, like I said, for XBTV, their job is to try and get both horses in the best perspective and knowing that the workmate was going out 5 furlongs, hence why the camera carried that one out. A big thank you to Nikki Conkings for tuning in. Also, I saw Marky Mark earlier. Yeah, absolutely. This being a live formatted show, we talked about it in-house. It's just, again, over the past year or so, things have been hot and heavy, and for the most part, for the right reasons, as we try to expand on that global scale. And we appreciate you tuning in. Of course, be sure to submit questions. I know that we had some questions that were already sent in. All right. Well, let's continue to answer questions as they go. And Joe, anything you wanted to add with regard to our first daughter candy ride on Monday?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything. We'll get trainer Dan Blacker's thoughts, but they're going to be pretty on the same page as you and I, as we've been chatting with him. But we'll have a personal look from Dan Blacker coming before the debut as well. So keep a lookout for that. But I think we just need to use this race as a building block for the future of her career. The first race does not define her career, and we'll just look to move forward from here.
Yeah, and I do find it interesting, though, when you look at the mother, she broke her maiden on debut in Aliford Bay, and Then it was at Golden Gate. She was well dispatched, but she had some precaution. She didn't start until she was a 3-year-old. I just kind of get the feeling that we're going to see a filly here that's going to get better with experience and just age. She's a very intelligent filly that has good technique. She's a wonderful filly to be around. She doesn't get in anybody's way, and looking forward to seeing her make that first start on New Year's Day. Hopefully, get it off on the right note from positivity standpoint. All right, so let's move on to another runner on New Year's Day, and we're going to head to Hot Springs, Arkansas, and in the name of Val. This certainly looks like a live spot, Joe. And just to clarify, this is a non-winners of 3. I believe it is a $30,000 claiming event. And what were the thoughts here on this particular entry?
Yeah, so same condition as she ran at Turfway Park last time, where she finished 5th, beaten 3. I really think that race was actually better than it may look on paper. She didn't have the greatest trip early on, but really came running on late. Steve ended up moving her to the 10 Mile Creek Training Center in Oaklawn, similar to where she trained last winter. And she handled that very well. It's a quiet environment that Steve uses for a lot of his horses, mainly due to stall space and things like that. But horses respond well there. I think it's a live spot. I mean, you see full fields at Oaklawn throughout the entire meet, especially early on in the meet. But when you really look into this race, it looks like a great spot for her. We know she handles the dirt fine. And at Oaklawn last year, we tried running her a mile maiden special weight. Her 2 other races were pretty decent. She ran 3rd beaten 4 in a maiden special weight and 4th beaten 4. So her 2 sprints at Oaklawn were actually pretty solid. So I'm expecting this to be a live race when we pick up Joel Rosario, who's in town. And we know he's one of the strongest finishers in the game. So hopefully that does the trick. She's also been a filly that's been kind of stuck drawn inside many times in her career. Not that you love to be hung out very, very wide, but I think the outside post will hopefully eliminate a decent amount of trouble for her.
All right, so this is going to go as race 6 on Monday, and that's the start of the late pick 5. There are a total of 10 races on the docket, and also, again, it looks like a race that she's probably going to be, I would say, in the neighborhood price-wise, thinking right around 6, maybe 8-1, perhaps. Joe, is that a fair assessment, or do you think she'll be less than that?
I think that's a fair assessment, but I wouldn't be shocked if she's somewhere in the 4 or 5-1 neighborhood.
We all know about the My Racehorse effect, and I appreciate you all so much for supporting your horses. Again, I do agree with you in regards to where she's drawn. I actually thought she ran better than looked last out at Turfway Park, and her numbers are pretty comparable, whether they be dirt or synthetic. But she's likely just a better dirt horse. And to the point that you make, I think at this stage of the game, she seems like a pretty solid suit in the spot. She's able to put together back-to-back victories in May and July at Indiana, Horseshoe Indy, but her races at Oaklawn from earlier in the year actually look feasible. So let's get Val home. And just a reminder, that race is on Monday, 2:50 Central, 12:50 for us here on the left coast, and 3:50 Eastern time on New Year's Day. So a couple of runners to kick off 2024 at Santa Anita with Sweet Voyage in the opener. And just be sure you set your reminders that Santa Anita, they kind of moved up those post times due to the sun and the sunset. So high noon here on the left coast of Sweet Voyage, and she is going postward for the very first time. All right, we've got some questions coming in. Sharon Tupper, she's wanting to know, how is Lane Way? And I just also want to kind of mention, and I had this conversation with Joe last night. I know that we have our Facebook groups. Feel free, if you've got questions, feel free to address them there, or send them on in, and we can obviously address those questions to the best of our abilities. I try to keep an eye on those chats as well. The other thing I want to mention is that, look, this is all about kind of talking and, kind of putting our thoughts out there. And I certainly, and on Joe's behalf and all of us here at My Racehorse, we don't want you to hold back. But if there's something, that's just not quite kosher for the social world, just kind of reserve for a moment. Think about what you're asking or writing, because we're doing our best to send out updates in the proper format, and in which we also receive them, because Lane Way, this has been a little bit of a journey over the past, 45 days, Joe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I will say we actually got good news. As much as our short-term target of the Joe Hernandez, which we were talking about with Forbidden Kingdom, got set back, we got great news when we did our diagnostics. He's been a horse that has been lightly raced, even though he's going to be going into his 7-year-old season here come January 1. But we've obviously had the rain that we've had to deal with. So when he went back to the track, he's kind of had an inconsistent schedule due to the rain and track conditions. And just when he wasn't 100% at that time, trainer Mandela and his team, have done a lot of tack walking, a lot of jogging. So hopefully here, starting January 1, we'll see him back progressing on the track. But the good news is I think we'll be able to just continue to move forward. Obviously, we're going to have to take each step forward as once he starts galloping and breezing back, that he's going to be able to withhold everything. But doing all of our diagnostics, everything checked out clear. So there's nothing that we're ultimately worried about, but it's just going to come down to horsemanship from the Mandela barn, which we know is top notch, and they'll have him in great hands. And just looking forward to where that next spot will be. That's ultimately the horse is going to tell us when he's ready, and we're going to, just have to play it by ear there. But I'm just happy to see that he's going to remain in the barn, and that was relieving news to me. It's just one of these horses that I don't want to say he's been unlucky, but we've just, had constant setbacks when the biggest moments are coming, or not getting into the Breeders' Cup and things like that. We tried 3 years getting in the Breeders' Cup with him. We've talked about Dubai multiple times with him, and nothing's really ever aligned. But we know he's got plenty of ability, and we just got to take advantage when he's 100%.
Well, he'll be celebrating his 7th birthday along with his comrades, celebrating a new year and a new journey. Of course, he's going to be 7 years of age. He's earned $500,000, graded stakes winner. And look, he won his first graded stakes as a 6-year-old. So let's try and get a second, even perhaps and beyond, and get him back on the winning track. A shout out to Ketchum. Absolutely, it's me. It's early here on a Saturday morning. I'll be putting in some hard time in the quarters tonight and tomorrow night, celebrating and ringing in the new year. Also wanted to say hello to Stephanie in Florida. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you. And of course, as we say here at My Racehorse, there's no us without you, and appreciate your positivity. Also wanted to send out, our sentiments and a prayer on behalf of all of us here at My Racehorse. Daniel Drummond, we wish you a speedy recovery. We know this past month has been difficult. Hopefully the horses are going to be the best medicine for you, and we can get a few of the My Racehorse and partnership horses home first for you. So Daniel, best of health into the new year. All right. Want to mention as we proceed in the show, we do have some offerings for indicating interest only, because they have not been approved just yet. Wanted to kind of move ahead, as we mentioned earlier, in regard to Blue Devil. Now, this is a horse that arrived on the scene. It's been a few weeks now, but Joe, the Grade 2 Harlan's Holiday at Gulfstream Park today. But let's touch on Blue Devil, and what was the thought process on a horse like this, as far as My Racehorse and their interest, and what do you see with a horse like this going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great opportunity to find a handicap division horse. In today's world, you see a lot of these horses retire early, and the category kind of is open for the taking each and every year. This is a horse that seems to be on the improve after a very successful summer at Saratoga. He ran a bang-up race in the Lucas Classic, finishing 3rd. Most recently in the Clark, ran 4th. He really didn't get out of the gate well, but still ran 4th in a competitive race. So it was just kind of a horse that we saw, for the immediate future, and then also looking for the springtime, summertime, and fall as well of next year to be an older horse to take advantage of a lot of these big races in 2024.
Yes, and indeed, he's earned $350,000. A 4-year-old who'd won $260,000 just in this year alone. Just based on looking at Ragozins and Thorograph, it's clear that this is certainly a horse that's kind of getting better. And I think the other point, when you have a situation like this for a horse who has good tactical speed. It does appear as if he prefers to run a bit more forward in his race. You go back and look at the Clark on November 24th. He kind of got shuffled off a bit early and then kind of got caught wide. So certainly looks like a horse that could develop, in what looks to be a productive year into 2024. Because I think, as we all know, to have a horse that has the capability of being a handicap horse, whether it be on the East Coast or even on the West Coast, and of course, this is in a new partnership with Rocket Ship Racing for trainer Jeff Hiles. This is a good commodity to have. And, it's nice to have a son of Uncle Mo in the arsenal. So as far as the anticipation of when this horse will be released, we don't have an exact date, but I would highly suggest that you watch that race closely today. It will go off this afternoon at approximately, Joe, 4:34 Eastern, 1:34 on the left coast. It's a grade 3 Harlan's Holiday. I think I mentioned it was a grade 2, but regardless, it's a grade at stake, and this horse certainly appears to have some talent in his corner.
Oh, absolutely. And the one other thing that I'll touch on is, as his focus has been on the dirt in his last 4 starts, it's always nice to have a horse that has been able to handle all 3 surfaces, meaning the turf and the all-weather, which is always a nice thing to have in your back pocket.
And just a reminder that this is essentially that situation where you want to indicate interest and get in line to have that opportunity to participate with a horse that, again, the future is bright. And of course, there is a lot of money to be made with a horse like this, knowing that the opportunity is awaiting in 2024. He looks, in that particular race, granted, you get the likes of New York Traffic, but when you look at the field, O'Connor has been dispatched as a 5-2 morning line favorite, did win the Fayette last out for Saffie Joseph Jr. But I think for the most part, Joe, you can maybe eliminate 1 or 2 horses in there. Other than that, it's anybody's race to win.
No, absolutely. It's an evenly matched field. The other thing, the Gulfstream Park main track is not for every single horse. So it's kind of an angle that you can play horse for course angles. It'll be our first time running at Gulfstream Park. So it's a question mark there. At the same time, I just think it's a race that is going to come down to trip and pace scenarios and everything like that. So it'll be interesting how today plays out, and just looking forward to what we can do with them in 2024 as well.
Yeah, and I also wanted to mention that there is a pick 6 carryover beginning in race number 6 at Gulfstream today, and also for those that participate in the NHC to qualify. There's a couple of qualifiers out there that you will have an opportunity to get involved with today. So be sure to check out National Handicappers Challenge and Championship, NHC.com. Carryover is $96,000, kicking off in race number 6 today. So, of course, the grade 3 Harlan's Holiday is a part of that. So maybe Blue Devil could be your single. Perhaps he'll be your single. You hit the pick 6, you indicate interest, and all of a sudden you're a partner. I think I like the sound of that, Joe Moran. All right. We've got not only Blue Devil as a prospect, but we've got 8 new offerings available to indicate interest. And, we've got the New York bred bundle. And Joe, touch on us in regards to what we're looking at here. This is exciting because the amount of money in the New York state and approved registry is just insane, and in all aspects. So from January all the way into December, throughout the year, there's going to be some big money opportunities, not just right there in the Big Apple, but we're even giving away hundreds of thousands of dollars away at tracks like Finger Lakes, for example.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's something that we always talk about, state bred divisions, whether it's in California, New York, Kentucky, obviously with their Kentucky fund is driving those purses higher every single year. But when you look at this, you're able to get into horses that were affordably purchased and can run in for that big money. You got 5 chances. We always talk about those $500,000 Stallion Series races as 2-year-olds, and that's always kind of the hope. So we got Christophe Clement, Danny Gargan, who will be taking his first horse for My Racehorse. It's someone that we've been looking to get on the team for quite some time now. Great guy, great trainer, great horseman. And then, of course, Todd Pletcher has been part of the program for quite some time now. So exciting. It's a little bit of a mix of freshman stallions, proven stallions of McLean's Music, Liam's Maps, Freud, who's a New York-based stallion, and then also Complexity and Volatile, who have been exciting, or their offsprings have been exciting to look at the sales, especially Volatile. I know you have purchased a few there, and Complexities have caught my eye for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Two freshman sires being represented there with Volatile and Complexity, who both also showed precocity on the racetrack. So that's the New York bred bundle. I like how they've assorted the horses here. You've got gray, bay, gray, chestnut, gay, bay. I mean, this is kind of a nice assortment of horses. So again, you are sending in to indicate interest. Once again, these horses are not available yet for purchase. But let's talk about the Incredi bundle. I know that you, of course, were up at Saratoga, and we've got an Authentic, and we've got a Constitution. And I mean, who wouldn't want to own an Authentic, especially a gray, because that might be authentic in its own right. There aren't a lot of gray Authentics out there, at least from what I've seen. And of course, Constitution has proven that he is the genuine article. He's been a tremendous sire, graded stake winner after graded stakes winner. He's a top-notch sire indeed.
Yeah, so we'll have the Authentic colt named Incredible already, going to trainer Steve Asmussen. He's a horse that we got to scout at the Saratoga yearling sale in August, and then being able to see him back later this winter. He developed a ton. At that sale, he was just a little bit immature, and then with our partnership on Blue Devil with Rocket Ship Racing, we were able to acquire into these two horses, which was a great opportunity. And the Constitution filly, she obviously caught a lot of people's eyes at the sale, and she's going to be going to Hall of Fame trainer Richard Mandela. And Richard, I would say, really highlighting and taking a look back on 2023, maybe had one of the, I don't want to say one of the best years of his career, but it was a big kind of blow up moment again for him in what I don't want to call the later stages of his career, but it was just awesome to see. He had some of the best maybe prospects that he's had in a while from a consistency standpoint. I felt like every weekend of Del Mar, he was unleashing a new star.
Right.
So it's nice to get him another talented 2-year-old, and we're going to be excited to see what she can do.
Yeah, I think, again, knowing that, from a West Coast perspective, the one thing you have to, let's put this into perspective. Dating back to June of this year until today, Richard Mandela has won at 27%, over $3 million in purse earnings. I mean, are you kidding me? This is a Hall of Fame trainer. You talk about trainers who the game has passed them by. This is a man who's just like fine wine. He's just getting better. And you think to yourself, well, he must be just getting better horses. Well, look, it helps to have better horses. But the truth is, this game is certainly one that Mandela has mastered. And on behalf of all of us here at My Racehorse, we so much appreciate all that he does. I think the one thing I really, I appreciate his candor. His interviews can be fun. But I think the reality is just his honesty. And, he looks at these horses and, kind of reminds me, of course, of Charlie Whittingham, and the fact that, you treat these horses like you own them. It's like a jockey. You leg a jockey up and say, ride this horse like you own him. Do what you think is best. And I think in regards to Richard Mandela, this is the open door policy that for us at My Racehorse is so appreciated. And it's not an easy thing to accomplish. Even on a smaller scale, I've owned horses, managed horses outwardly. There are certain trainers that just don't communicate. They don't want to keep that door open, which makes our jobs that much more difficult to assess, And again, we got thousands of partners that need that communication, and we appreciate you, Richard Mandela. So it's exciting to know that Constitution filly is going to be heading to the West Coast. All right. Randy Roastner, I didn't hear. Are there trainers picked for the New York bundle? I think we touched on that, but do you know exactly who's getting which horses, Joe?
Yep. So we have the 3 trainers picked of Todd Pletcher, Danny Gargan, and Christophe Clement. I know I have them here. I mean, I got to remember the names off the top of my head. I'm putting pressure on myself right now.
I wouldn't do that, Joe, because look, this is just to indicate interest, and clearly they just go in there and indicate interest and then sort out the rest in the end.
Well, those are the 3 trainers we have. I'll make sure I follow up with the questions here online so I don't leave you all hanging.
Sure, not an issue. Randy Rossner, appreciate you tuning in. And there is the app, Nabucco Minter. Hey, I give the insights I can, but the man about town is right there, Joe Moran. We are very fortunate to have Joe, of course, covering us from east to west, inside. Again, doing our best to provide the best communication with horses moving forward. And again, without that communication, we can't score touchdowns and win those big races. You're welcome, Randy. Hopefully, you'll get involved here with the New York bundle, the Incredible bundle. I like the idea between the two. Blue Devil, of course, in the Grade 3 Harlan's Holiday down at Gulfstream Park. Joe, as we await on a few more questions here, did you have any plans for the new year?
With runners on New Year's, no, I do not. So it's going to be taking it easy. Relaxing a little bit and looking forward to hopefully getting one, if not two winners to start 2024.
I love that. Shirley Eli, how long did we possibly see a race from man above men? Man above men. Joe?
Man among men is
man among men. That's been threw me for a spin.
I'm knocking on wood here because it has taken us so long to get him back to this point, but he could not be doing any better. I would say of any horse in the barn that I'm excited to see what they can do. He is high up on the list right now. He's working phenomenal. He just had his first half-mile breeze from the 3/8 pole, but he's really progressing the right way. And I think it's just, again, a tip of the cap to trainer Richard Mandel and his whole staff of really being patient, listening to the horse. And I think that's what's gotten us here. I would say our timeline, we're still 5-6 weeks away. That's my gut feeling. The one thing about this horse, he is a two-turn type horse, so we have to get him prepared to go 2 turns. I don't think we would waste the thought of sprinting. Now, he is a winner, so he could technically run down the hill because they will write an allowance race down the hill. Right. So that is something that would maybe intrigue me to give him the chance there as a comeback effort. But 5/8, even 6 furlongs, probably not quite in his wheelhouse, off the layoff. But at the same time, you got to get a race into him. So it's all going to come down to, as you said early on in the show, what the condition book has to offer. But that's what my estimated timeline is going to be, that 5 to 6 week mark. I think we'll see him in the entry box in February.
All right. Keeping in mind that we have not seen Man Among Men since September of last year. But good news is he was a winner that day. And certainly looks to be a horse that is blessed with talent. Just a matter of getting him back into a race sound, which it appears at this point in time he is doing quite well. Marky Mark, thanks for tuning in on this Saturday morning. Happy New Year to you. He said and asked the question, how is a Duke doing at Gulfstream, and has he healed well? He last raced back on September 2nd. I thought that was a huge effort in the Grade 1 Jockey Club Gold Cup. 4-time winners earned right at that $500,000 mark. Duke of Love. Yeah,
thankfully everything looks to be in the past. He's back under tack, should be starting back up on the track again. The Hallandale Beach, the Palm Meadows area has been hit with a good amount of rain over the last 2 weeks as well. So again, we're not going to send him right to the track over not perfect conditions. But Josie said he was about ready to head back to the track, and we'll just look to see him progress there. Not going to be like he's starting completely over, but you are kind of starting from square one at the same time, just given the extent of time off from that standpoint. But fingers crossed, and the infection looks to be well past us. Josie's done a phenomenal job. The whole team at the Ontario Clinic did an incredible job, as this was a very serious and seemed to, I don't want to say vicious attacking infection, but it was something that kept spreading. And it took a lot of time to get him back to this point. So we're just happy to see him here.
Pretty remarkable to consider a horse that's won over 3 different racetracks. One at the age of 2, one at the age of 3, one at the age of 4. Looking for his 5-year-old campaign. He's banked to $483,000, graded stake winner. Indeed, kudos going out to Josie Carroll and her entire staff. Yet another horse that could have a big say in some handicaps. And one thing I like about Duke of Love, extremely versatile. He can run both services, He could essentially sprint. He could route. There's a lot to look forward to with him. All right, Brian messaging in regards to Seize the Gray. He was sent to a Highlander, did get a bit of a respite. Now headed back to the coach, Dwayne Lucas. What's the status on him?
He's doing great. Haven't had a chance to send it out. We don't have video, but he had his first little easy 3/8 breeze. Highlander, where he's at. I had the opportunity to go see him 2 weeks ago now, maybe just over 2 weeks ago now. He looks phenomenal. The staff absolutely loves him there, but he's, I don't want to call him a veteran since he's still only 2 technically today, but he's had that race experience under him. He knows his job. He loves his job. And I think this break will do him a lot of good. It was more not anything physical. It was just a mental and body refresher to hopefully have him campaign to maybe make a run here in this 3-year-old season. So timeline of him leaving, I would probably say within 30 days, maybe a little more than that. I would say we're ahead of schedule of what we originally anticipated. But due to Oaklawn, the big part of sending him to Highlander is that ability. They have a 5H track where they can breeze up to a half a mile. Mm-hmm. So we'll get those works into him. So when he gets into Oaklawn, he's well prepared, just as track conditions there. You don't want to try to get a horse fit when you're dealing with constant weather, muddy tracks, hard tracks, things of that nature. So it was a tactical decision where we sent him just to be able to get him, pretty extended in his fitness before getting him back into Oaklawn.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. It's not easy to do because the one thing about the coach, he likes to kind of march on, and we appreciate the fact that, giving this horse a chance to, decompress, recompress, and come back as a better 3-year-old. And I think, the point of Arrogant, unfortunately, leaving us too soon as a sire is that when you look at his stock, you look at his progeny, they've proven to kind of get better with some age and maturity, much like him. He was a horse that, unfortunately, didn't have that opportunity to really, quote unquote, shine as a 2-year-old. He didn't start until he was 3. In fact, April of that year, then of course went on to become a champion in his own right. So hopefully that patience is going to pay it forward. We appreciate you all being patient as well. Joel Parr, Happy New Year to you. Any word on Seismic Beauty? What's the latest on her, Joe?
Yep. So we just sent out an update, I believe 2 days ago, just on the surgery. Everything went very well as it could have went. It's never an ideal situation that she's had 2 setbacks and had to have 2 surgeries at this stage in her career. The one thing I can say is what we've seen from her in the morning, she has limitless ability. I'll use that word. I mean, she's pretty special in the way that she breezes, and you and I, Nick, have been able to watch her breeze at Los Alamitos on multiple occasions. But the talent is certainly there. It's just going to be a matter of what it's going to take to be able to get her over these. And some of it can be maturity. I mean, she is a big filly for a 2-year-old. And there is a reason why 25% or less than 25% of 2-year-olds make it to the races. It's a lot of pressure on young horses. Not that they shouldn't be in training, because a lot of that is good for their bone remodeling and everything of that standpoint for the longevity of their career. But not all horses can withstand that training at 2. So hopefully that's just the case here. The big part when these horses go into surgery is not just the bone chip that they have to get removed, that fragment, but the cartilage underneath. And thankfully, all the cartilage was healthy underneath, and there was nothing additional that needed to be done or of concern. So she's going to have a 90-day break. That's standard when it comes to the knees. And then hopefully we'll get her back into action. So it's going to be back to the waiting game. I know those are hard moments. But as we always say in horse racing, if you don't have patience, they'll force you to have patience. So it's one of those things. I think she's one that it's worth having the patience for.
And just out of curiosity, where will she lay up as far as time off?
Bradbury Farm, where she was previously. That was the plan. So once she gets those sutures removed at Santa Anita, she'll head off to the farm. So we'll confirm that and have an update out once that's official.
All right. Before we get to a Steve Wadsworth question there, and thank you, Steve, for your patience. What's the latest update on Straight No Chaser? That's it's coming from yours truly. I'd like to know.
I saw there's a few comments on that. No, we are back on the track, jogging daily, and everything has been great since he's returned. Another one of testing our patience, but I think it was 100% the right move. Obviously, when he came back in, we were kind of forced to send him back, or he just gave us signs that he wasn't ready to start back up in training. This was very similar to, I'll give a good comparison of Dr. Schibel, of trainer Mark Glatt. This was a horse that came off bone bruising, came back into the track, got a PET scan, was not ready. So he had to go back to the farm before he could come back. So this is just the new improved technology that we have with these PET scans that are showing you things in advance of what we can see through x-rays or by touch and feel of the horsemen. So it's a great thing for the well-being of the horse. He is going to need a jog for 3 to 4 weeks, just given the time that he's been out of training. So to give anyone a crystal ball timeline, that's going to be a little tough on my part. I mean, he's a horse that I'll compare a little bit to Forbidden Kingdom, that he's sporty, doesn't carry a ton of weight. So once he gets back to the work tab, I don't think it's going to take him a lot, but I still think we're probably looking from the time he started back on the track, closer to 4 months rather than 3, just because he's going to have that month of jogging and foundation put into him.
All right. Thank you, Frank Carrietti, for that question. And, again, we're patient. 2024 looks like we're loaded up with some really nice horses that certainly have resume going forward. It's just a matter of, kind of the pieces of the puzzle coming together, and could prove to be a productive 2024. And, of course, all eyes on the Breeders' Cup. We'd like to have more than just 1, 2, perhaps even 3 contenders in the Breeders' Cup World Championships. All right, we're going to get to the final question. A big thank you, first and foremost, to those who have tuned in for the live weekend preview. We still have not received official word yet in regards to Santa Anita. The probability of that race going on the turf today, the Grade 2 Joe Hernandez, is highly unlikely. As Joe alluded to earlier, chances are if it will remain and the races go forward, it goes to the main track, then we would likely go forward contingent upon our trainer, Richard Mandela, feeling the track was deemed safe. But great to see that Forbidden Kingdom is back in a big way. I love the change in rider, giving the horse kind of a new perspective. And this was by design, Joe, correct? Flavian Pratt?
Yep, he worked him 3 weeks ago, and since then they got along very well. So it was, I don't want to say an easy decision, because Juan has done such a great job with him,
right?
And is a very talented rider in Southern California. But having the opportunity of Pratt, and I just think the way he gets along with him, it was something that we had to, throw something new to try to, have a big 2024 in front of us.
No, I would agree 100%. On the other point, there were a few that had pointed out the fact that Juan chose Turn on the Jets, but that is fallacy. That is not true. We went a different direction, and why not have Flavian Pratt, who's doing what he does best, and that's win race. We love Juan. He's done great for us, but for this particular horse, a little change in course for him with a rider, different hands may just take us to that next level, because ultimately got to get that Grade 1 with Forbidden Kingdom. When we do, that residual comes into play in a big way. All right, Steve Wadsworth, this will be our final question. And just want to mention that we're hoping to kind of get ourselves back in a rhythm with the live show. So if you have some ideas, you have some criticism or praises, feel free to send them in. Hannah, of course, will address with our social team and determine what's good, not good, what we can add, what we can remove. We also potentially are talking about coming back with the Wednesday work show, where we can, kind of break down works, and even maybe bring in a trainer, a jockey, to kind of discuss how a particular horse felt or what goes into the mindset of these horses when they breed. So would love to hear from you. Your feedback is certainly appreciated. All right, Joe, Catalyst debuted back on December 8th for trainer Steve Asmussen in a partnership with Tristan Americ and Delridge. Daughter of Gunrunner, kind of missed the break. She went off favored and never was able to recover. How is she doing since the race? But tell us what your thoughts were in regards to the race. Were you disappointed? Do you think she's capable of more? What's going to take for her to get better based on her debut?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, we'll start off, we had trainer Steve Asmussen on a live talking about his expectations going into debut. So I don't think the debut should have came by shock to anyone. Obviously, we're still hoping for a better end result. But it was something Steve kind of thought she was going to need a race or two to really get to her best. And,
Right.
when you really looked at the field, she was the lone first-time starter in a 12-horse field, going a mile on debut, which is no easy task. So all in all, she was kind of up against it on debut, but she was ready to run. We wanted to get that experience, kind of circling back to the start of the show with Sweet Voyage, of that experience and what that's going to do for horses. This was the situation that we were in. So out of the race, she came out great. She's been galloping daily. She had her first work back in company the other day with a multiple winner. And Keith Asmussen was aboard, and I thought she worked above average. So to me, it looks like she has taken a step forward from that race. We don't have a next race penciled in yet. That was her first work back. But there's two options in January, one going a flat mile, one going a mile and a 16th. So, in these situations, we're going to leave this up to trainer Steve Asmussen. He's the one dealing with her every single day. He knows her best. And I think that time standpoint of when she's exactly ready, whether that's 2 weeks, whether that's 4 weeks or 3 weeks, that's going to be his decision. But in the end, I think we should see her return in January. I believe off the top of my head, the races are the 12th and 21st or somewhere right in there. I know I just posted it and I should know, but right in that ball range. And I think we'll see her take that step forward, whether she needs one more race, as Steve said, 2 or 3 races till we see her at her best. I still think in the end, you're going to see a much improved performance. You're going to see her sharper out of the gate, which was a big factor on debut. And hopefully that's, the answer to it all.
All right, Joe. Well, thank you for that. Thank you, Steve, for the questions. And thank you to you all for not only your questions, but your commentary. And again, your feedback is appreciated. It's interesting. I was kind of going back on the stats for Dan Blacker, as you mentioned, Sweet Voyage again. And, his first-time starter win back on July of 2022 in a while was actually, incidentally, a straight no chaser. His prior first-time starting win was in March of 2018. Now, mind you, since dating back to the very beginning when he started training, it's been about 9 years. He and then some. When you consider the fact that he's 5% with a firster, feel pretty proud to see straight no chaser as part of the 1 of 5 to have done that. But we know that Sweet Voyage, she certainly kind of gives the indication she's going to appreciate a race in tow. So an exciting weekend. Again, we are hoping by the end of this live show that we will have had an answer as to whether or not the races would be going forth. Today, we do not have that answer for you. Likely Forbidden Kingdom's race being taken off the turf. So on that note, if Forbidden Kingdom goes postward at high noon here on the left coast, the best of luck to you all. And the great to Joe Hernandez, of course, to our partners at Spendthrift. If they cancel, they'll reassess, and likely that race will come back. I believe it would come back next Saturday, but don't quote me on that. So Blue Devil, indicate your interest. For the Accreta Bundle and New York 5, indicate interest. Get in line. Make your presence felt. Best of luck, of course, to both Val and Sweet Voyage on Monday. No better way to start the new year than with horse racing and my racehorse. So, Joe, any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
No, I just want to wish everyone a happy new year. Looking forward to hopefully an up year. I mean, not to say it was a down year, but obviously things didn't go our way. I had some horses of our big horses go to the shelf. So looking forward to getting some of these big horses back to the races. And it looks like January and February should be big months for us of just getting horses back to the races, young horses starting their careers. So hopefully there will be a lot to look forward to and hopefully some big things to come at the end of the year.
Yeah, I'm feeling quite optimistic. I think in reflecting on 2023, I think for the most part positive. The fact that Laneway, came and put that exclamation point with a graded stakes win, which being the OG was deserving of that, not to mention the fact that the team has done such a wonderful job, and you as partners, of course, being patient, so passionate about your equine friends. So on behalf of all of us at My Racehorse, big thank you going out to Hannah Bloom, putting this all together here on a Saturday morning. Not an easy thing to do. It's the holidays. We're celebrating. We'll keep you updated on Forbidden Kingdom, whether it goes postward or not. And ladies and gentlemen, until next time, we look forward to seeing you on these live shows. We appreciate your interaction, your questions, and your feedback. For Nick Hines, Joe Moran, Hannah Bloom, and all of us here at My Racehorse, Happy New Year. Until next time, we will see you in the winner's circle. Take care.